Post-AI matchup report. The Las Vegas Raiders versus the New York Giant.
Welcome back to the deep dive. So today our source material takes us into the world of predictive modeling. We're looking at an NFL matchup that's actually already happened, the Las Vegas Raiders versus the New York Giants.
Right.
But, we're not really here to talk about touchdowns. We're here to talk about the data architecture. We're peeling back the hood on 3 different AI frameworks, OpenAI, Gemini, and Grok, that all analyze this game.
That's right. And what's so interesting about the sources here is that we get the pregame forecast, the model's whole rationale, and the verified postgame result.
Which is pretty rare.
It is. So our mission today is, well, it's pretty analytical. We want to understand the anatomy of a consensus. How did 3 independent models, built on totally different data, maybe different training, reach such a high confidence agreement? And crucially, why was that prediction ultimately proven to be correct?
Okay, let's unpack this. So the game itself took place on December 28, 2025. And right from the jump, even traditional analysis, the betting market, had already sort of set the stage for a Giants victory.
Precisely. Let's start right there with that market snapshot. The consensus, just based on traditional odds, it translated into a 59% implied probability of winning for the New York Giants.
Okay, so 59%.
Yeah. Statistically, if you played this game 10 times, the Giants would win about 6 of them. It's a favorite status for sure, but it still leaves this huge 41% window for the Raiders.
That's not a lock by any means.
No. That margin is significant, but it's not what I'd call overwhelming.
What's truly fascinating to me is how the AI models reacted to that number, to that 59%. They didn't just agree with it, they basically amplified the confidence.
What's fascinating here is the sheer alignment. All 3 AI models were singing the exact same tune. They all had a short signal, but with a bullish sentiment, which was favoring the Giants.
Okay, let's break that down for a second. What does that short and bullish matrix actually mean here?
So a short signal in this context usually implies the model expects the outcome to deviate pretty significantly from the spread. That line set by the bookmakers.
Ah, okay. So the models weren't just saying the Giants would win by a hair. They were predicting they'd beat the spread, that they'd win pretty comfortably.
Exactly. And the bullish sentiment just confirms that high conviction in an outright Giants victory. And when you pull all that conviction together, the overall AI confidence metric wasn't 59%. It jumped to a really robust 68%.
68, wow.
And that 9% gap, that elevated confidence over the general market, that's where the real edge is. It's a signal that the models found some deep structural issues that the market might have been slow to price in.
That immediately makes me wonder, what evidence was hiding in the data that convinced 3 different AIs to add 9 percentage points of confidence. That kind of quantitative edge is huge.
It is.
And it led directly to that final recommendation, a clear away pick for the Giants.
It implies the models found a high leverage factor, something the market was maybe discounting. And when 3 totally distinct systems agree like that, to that degree, it suggests the reason wasn't just one variable. It was like a complex, intersecting web of data points, all pointing to the same conclusion.
So let's get into that rationale. This is the core of our deep dive. What were the specific positive things the models cited for the Giants' advantage? The sources list, stronger recent form, and better consistency as number 1.
Right. But stronger form can be subjective if you don't measure it.
Yeah.
The AI isn't watching highlight reels. It's looking at hard metrics like expected points added per play EPA and defense-adjusted value over average, or DVOA.
Okay.
And the sources show the Giants were trending up big time in those efficiency metrics over the last month. For example, their offensive EPA per rush was climbing, while the Raiders was either flat or even declining. That consistent upward trend signals real sustainable improvement.
That makes perfect sense. It's not just about winning, it's about winning efficiently. The second factor was improved cohesion on both defense and offense. Cohesion sounds fuzzy. How does an AI quantify that?
It's actually about operational cleanliness.
Yeah.
The models would be looking at a reduction in self-inflicted wounds. We're talking about pre-snap penalties, false starts, defensive offsides, things that just kill drives.
Right.
And we're also talking about the success rate on third downs. If the Giants' offense had a big increase in efficiency on third and short, it means they're executing complex plays smoothly. That's a huge sign of cohesion. The AI sees that data and weights it heavily because that kind of operational sharpness is repeatable.
And the third positive thing for the Giants was historical. A favorable head-to-head record against the Raiders. I think OpenAI specifically flagged this as a slight but notable edge.
So you have a trifecta. You've got measurable efficiency gains, what we're calling form. You have operational cleanliness or cohesion. And then you have this proven historical dominance against this specific opponent.
Okay, so now we have to flip the coin. Strengths are only really meaningful if they can exploit weaknesses, right? The models weren't just high on the Giants, they were actively bearish on the Raiders.
Exactly. Their main vulnerability was just sheer inconsistency, especially their inability to keep any momentum going. Plus, key players were dramatically underperforming their own historical benchmarks.
Was there one specific Achilles heel that all the models agreed on as the most exploitable?
Absolutely. The one structural flaw that Grok and Gemini both highlighted was the Raiders' struggling offensive line. They noted the Giants' defensive unit was way stronger and could really exploit that mismatch.
So they weren't just saying, oh, the Raiders have a bad O-line.
No. They were weighting the D-line versus O-line matchup as a major high-leverage point of attack.
So the models are almost doing this micro-analysis, saying, forget the quarterback matchup for a second, this game is going to be won or lost in the trenches.
That's exactly it. They're looking at metrics like pressure rate allowed. So if the Raiders' O-line was allowing pressure on, say, 35% of dropbacks, which is way higher than the league average, and the Giants' D-line had a high sack rate, the model sees a deterministic variable. It gives that positional advantage 3 or 4 times the weight of, say, a receiver matchup.
Because if the O-line fails, the whole thing just collapses.
The entire scheme collapses, yeah. It doesn't matter who your skill players are at that point.
And the problems for the Raiders didn't stop there. The models seemed to neutralize what should have been their biggest advantage, playing at home.
Right. The source material points out that the Raiders had major issues at home all season, repeatedly failing to cover the spread.
And that's a huge red flag for a model.
It's a critical trend failure in predictive analytics. Home field advantage is a known statistical boost. It usually adds a few points to a team's efficiency score. But when a team repeatedly fails to perform to that expectation on their own turf, well, the AI sees that the traditional advantage isn't just gone, it might actually be reversed. It takes away a layer of uncertainty, which makes the case for the Giants even stronger.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. It's how the systems handled new data, late-breaking information. We see this with Grok's specific nuance.
Yeah.
While OpenAI and Gemini had their statistical frameworks, Grok pushed the confidence just a little bit higher because it specifically referenced the Raiders' key injuries on offense.
Right. And Grok, with its known architecture, it excels at integrating that kind of rapidly changing real-time news data. It was doing a real-time risk optimization. The other models had already flagged the weak O-line, but Grok overlaid the confirmed injuries, probably to a tackle or a key receiver, as just more confirmation.
It's basically saying the trend is already bad and now the personnel is even worse.
Precisely. That layered analysis is what nudged the consensus confidence from just strong to, well, decisive.
So if OpenAI is calculating the long-term trend lines and Gemini is focused on the efficiency metrics, Grok is like the final confirmation, making sure no last-minute human variable like a key injury has been missed.
That's the value of a multi-model approach. They're all covering each other's analytical blind spots. But, even with 68% confidence, Grok included a really important caveat, reminding us of the inherent unpredictability of divisional matchups.
So the systems acknowledge that in a heated rivalry, the variance is just always higher.
They're calculating a high probability, but they're not eliminating risk entirely. They're not guaranteeing an outcome.
That distinction is so important. They're just stating the probability based on the best data synthesis possible. And that brings us to the ultimate proof point. The validation.
Yes. Based on the source material, this whole conversation is a post-review. The outcome is already known. And that predicted outcome, the one driven by that 68% confidence, was successfully verified as correct.
So it confirms that the pile of evidence was strong enough to overcome the risk that Grok warned about.
Exactly. The core lesson here isn't just that the models were right. They were right because they isolated this convergence of high-leverage factors. You had the Giants with consistent form and a strong defense, while the Raiders were battling all these compounding weaknesses. A bad offensive line, inconsistency, failure at home, and then last-minute injuries.
The convergence is the key, isn't it?
It is. If only one model had noted the offensive line struggle, you might dismiss it as an outlier. But when OpenAI, Gemini, and Grok all independently identify and then weight the same set of core weaknesses, That collective rationale carries immense, and in this case, verified weight. The successful outcome wasn't a guess. It was a data-driven conclusion.
Let's wrap this up by bringing it all together then. So what does this all mean?
It means that statistical modeling gives us a way not just to predict, but to do sophisticated factor weighting. We saw a successful forecast built on specific, measurable variables. A 59% market probability got turbocharged by a 68% AI confidence level.
And the rationale was completely consistent.
Right. Strong, measurable giants form in cohesion, exploiting specific structural weaknesses of the raters, especially that mismatch in the trenches and the neutralization of home field advantage. The consensus among these very different AI frameworks proved to be the most reliable indicator.
It really proves that when you have robust data and sophisticated models, even the seeming chaos of human competition can be rendered statistically probable. That difference between 59 and 68% was the difference between an informed guess and a verified insight.
And that leads me to a final sort of provocative thought for you to mull over. If a high degree of AI confidence, it's 68%, combined with this consensus of rationale across 3 different computational architectures, if that can successfully predict and verify the outcome in a traditionally unpredictable scenario like a divisional pro sports match, what other complex real-world systems could benefit from this multi-model approach? Think about areas where uncertainty just reigns, like forecasting market volatility or predicting supply chain disruptions, or maybe assessing geopolitical risks. Could this kind of synthesis of independent AI frameworks be the key to overcoming that inherent uncertainty in those massive complex systems too? That's the real deep dive to explore next.
Thanks for listening, and we will see you back on the next post-game report.
Experience the future of prediction markets. Get plugged into Big Brain today at brainbig.ai.